his bio is in your packet. He's going to share more about himself with you. He is somebody that when you become a client of Ruben's, he is accessible to you always. He's the guy that is, making the phone call to his clients when something big is going on in the economy, when the market is dropping, when people are freaking out. He's the one that's actually getting on the phone and calling his clients to make sure they're okay. He's not the one hiding or waiting to be called. So you have somebody that will be in front of you with honesty, with passion for what he's doing, with a lot of incredible information. And I want to introduce to you at this point, Ruben Rozental.
Thank you.
Come on over.
Okie doke. What is this? Dollar, right? Currency. Consider that, it actually represents all the money that you have for your retirement. It's a metaphor for all the money that you have in your retirement. This represents all the times that you, as we say, we order from the left side of the menu instead of the right side of the menu. Vacations you might have passed up. All the times, as you thought about saying, gee, I need to save for retirement, that whole conversation, right? This is all the money that you have for your retirement, right? And it's going to have to last you 30 to 35 years. Here's the problem. The IRS wants its share of it. Inflation is going to eat into it. Last month was it was the hottest month for inflation since 2008. Healthcare, which is everybody in this room. If you're not thinking about it, you're scared about it. So healthcare is going up at 3 times the rate of inflation. It's averaging at 6% annually, an increase. And if you want to know what that looks like, if you're 60, by the time you're 72, the $1,000 you spend for healthcare is going to cost you $2,000. By the time you're 84, that $2,000 will cost you $4,000. So we better have some really good strategies on how you're going to pay that. This little piece is everything about your children. Either they want help in taking your grandchildren maybe to school, or they have to come back and live with you for a while, or they need help in buying a house. And we're good parents. Those of us that could, and so we want to help them out. So this is what you're left with. And so our job at Black Pearl Financial Services is basically to stretch this, right? And make sure, right, that it will last you for as long as you live. And as I like to joke with my clients is, you tell me when you're going to pass, I'll make sure you run out of money that night, right? But, many of us also want to leave something for, as a legacy for our children and stuff like that. So it's not just about when we're here, but something, afterwards. As I said, my name is Ruben Rozental, and just as a little bit of background, my parents came here in 1963 from Argentina. So I was 6 years old, so I didn't have very much in the decision, but I have always been incredibly grateful that my parents were that courageous to leave everybody and everything behind and come to this country. We didn't know anybody. We had somewhat of a connection to maybe my father could get a job in the clothing business, and he did. I went to South Broward High School. Back then, it took me a while to learn English. And I remember going to Daney Elementary, and there was one girl from Cuba who knew a little bit of Spanish. So it was very different than it is today. But it was very, it was just, when my parents said it was an absolute gift, and this isn't a perfect country, but it is a great country. And for that, I'm always going to be thankful for, because I don't know what I'd be doing in Argentina, but I wouldn't be in front of a room talking about taxes, that's for sure. Black Pearl Financial Services started in 2011, so this particular aspect of my career is 7 years old. I've been in it for 35 years. Most of it I spent 17 years with Merrill Lynch doing international business in Latin America. In 2002, I decided to leave because I wanted to change the model, where instead of working for commissions, I actually start working for the clients. And I pretty much have dedicated my life to learning everything I can about insurance and estate planning and taxes. And thanks to our wonderful Congress, I always have to relearn everything every 1 or 2 years, right? And so tonight is really about one of the really great things they did just now, which is change the tax code. Recently, I partnered up with a CPA. He's right back there. His name is Amory Bowden, and he started out renting subletting for me some space, and we started talking. And I've always wanted to work with a CPA, because one of the things that people are missing is you've got this financial advisor here, you got the CPA there. They don't talk, and we have very different strategies. Trust me, very different strategies. We're actually going to talk about those tonight a little bit. And so, you know, and I thought how wonderful it would be like if we would be able to talk together and say, you know, this is what we want to do for our client. Check the taxes out, check the performance side out. Is it appropriate? And then be able to do it. So we're pretty excited as we keep growing Black Pearl Financial Services. Let's see. It works. These seminars are actually set up by the Society for Financial Awareness, SOFA. And SOFA is basically dedicated to educating the public, right? And, you know, investments are not difficult. But, you know, Wall Street has done a pretty good job of making them difficult. They keep getting more complicated, more, you know, there's all sorts of different shares of mutual funds, there's all different types of funds, there's all different types of stocks, and there's over-the-counter and international, and so, and of course, you know, we did it because that way you need us. What SOFA's out to do, right, and I'm a member of SOFA, is basically to educate the public, okay, and give them that knowledge, because knowledge is power in this business. A couple of disclosures. Lily, you want to hit at least one more of those lights back there? Turn it. Leave one, yeah, just one more. Perfect. Does that work? Okay, great. Just a couple of things, right? This is the legalese. I am not affiliated with the IRS, the Social Security. I'm not affiliated with any government agency. The financial professional, you know, is not permitted to offer, and no statement containing or shall constitutes tax or legal advice. I'm not a CPA, okay? I'm a financial planner. And I just want to be real clear about that. This presentation is designed to provide general information on the subjects covered pursuant to an IRS Circular 230, okay? I encourage you that whatever you learn tonight, right, is to check it out with your CPA, tax consultant, whether you use TurboTax or whatever. But, you know, definitely you should go back and check these things out. This presentation is provided for informational purposes only. We're going to do a hypothetical case, and it's only an illustrative purpose, okay? Just to show you how a little bit of changing of a strategy could really bring money to the bottom line. So our goals tonight are basically to understand the relevant changes to the personal income tax and to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. They have such formal names to every time they pass legislation. So these are basically, they were passed in late 2017. They take effect in 2018. We're not going to talk about the corporate taxes, just today's only individual. We're going to understand the impact of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act on retirement income streams. We're going to identify tools and strategies available, right, to middle-income retirees. And the last part is really important. We're going to avoid the political and stick to the actionable, okay? One of the toughest jobs that we have, and it isn't just under, you know, the current administration. This goes back many times. You know, there's something on the 6 o'clock news, right? And it's something they're talking about. And in all governments, they float a lot of ideas, okay? And they do it on purpose. I have a master's in political science. It's called a trial balloon. They want to see how it goes. So they take it out there like they're going to do. They want to make sure that they're not going to get kicked out of office if they pass it. And so then what happens is, you know, they either pass it or they don't. And by the time they pass it, the policy that gets established is quite different than what you heard on the news that day. But many times you hear something on the news, and then next thing you know, like, you know, you're acting and reacting to it, right? And our job at Black Pearl Financial Services is to just do away with the noise, right? So, and, you know, we basically just stick to those things that we can control at this point. Okay. They couldn't find a better picture of confusion, so they got this couple here. You know, if you're not, I take finance for granted. I've been immersed in it my whole life. It's just that, you know, I live it and stuff like that. But it can be very confusing, only because there are just so many rules. I always said that, you know, if Congress was, you know, out to create a horse, it would look like a camel, right? It's like it just, like, they take something simple, like you can't touch your money for 59 and a half. Why not 60 for 59 and a half? You gotta take the money out by 70 and a half. Oh, it's not just that, because depending upon when it is at 70 and a half, you can even skip a year before you take your money out. Things like that, okay? And it just goes on, no matter what the topic is around finances. And that's basically, you know, it's just that look of confusion. Tonight we are going to talk about taxes, and I'll be the first one to tell you, okay? It's not the most exciting topic in the world, right? It's not like, you know, it's not a telenovela. You know what I mean? It's like there's, you know what I mean? It's taxes. So I'm going to try to, you know, use as many metaphors, quips, bring it to real life that we can make it as interesting as possible. These are the new brackets, right? And basically it's, you know, 10% from 0 to 19,050. And then these brackets stay pretty much the same, right? And they show where they were in 2017 and then where they were in now in 2018. So for the most part, you know, it did drop down. If this was it, then it would be great, but it's not, of course. Like I said, Congress had to kind of tweak and change things. They become effective January the 1st of this year, and they're set to expire in 2025. There is talk of what they call a tax plan 2.0, of what part of it will be is that they want to they want to go ahead and make this permanent, but right now it isn't. And that's one of the things I'm talking about, because you can always say, well, it's only going to be good for 7 years. You know, and you know, for us, it's what can we do for you in 2018, 2019, maybe do something for 2020, okay? But we don't go out to the, you just don't, you know. I can explain, you just don't build your house, you know, you don't do long-term financial decisions based on something that could happen. We based on what's reality is right now. By the way, it's a pretty informal thing, so if I'm talking too fast, if you have questions, okay, just raise your hand. This is a little more complicated, you know, the previous slide, and this just shows you exactly that. You know, for instance, here it's $1,905, which is the 10% of that. I bet that there is a, can you see that red thing? Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. Okay, that's a lot better than my finger in there. So 10% of that, that's $1,905, and 12%. What they're showing you here is basically that we are, you know, we use a marginal tax brackets in this country. So when you say, oh, you know, I'm in the 35% tax bracket, no, you're not in the 35%. That's where they're taxing you your last dollars at, anything over 400,000. Okay? So that's very important to keep up, you know, to keep in mind. This is what I think is a really great way to look at your, you know, these tax brackets, right? And you can see right here, this part right here, that's basically 0. And we're going to show you how we can take advantage of that. As you can see, this is the first bump from 12 to 22%, which is a pretty steep increase there. And this is the second one from 24 to 32%, right? So if we are in this area right here, we have to make sure that we don't add a couple of dollars and then next thing you know, you go into the next tax bracket. And that's basically, you know, that's some of the things we do. I want you to get used to this because later on I'm going to give you we're going to do a case study, and it actually shows up like in these, what we call a tax map, okay? This is really intended as a 2-part seminar. Today's the first part, and without any obligation to, because nothing will be sold tonight, and nothing will be sold in the first meeting or at our office, we actually will offer you your very personalized own, you know, tax map. So, capital gains and qualified dividends. The whole idea about capital gains is that they wanted people to make investments in the country and keep them long term, because investments, whether it's in real estate or buying stocks or opening businesses or buying equipment, whatever it may be, right? That is obviously in the good of the economy and the good for society. And so what they wanted to do is the people that were really serious about, you know, doing it as opposed to just a quick trade, if you held it more than a year, it was a long-term capital gain.
less than a year, it was a short-term capital gain. And those were basically tied that if it was a short-term capital gain, it was like ordinary income. They did away with that. They did away with that, and they went to this, okay? So these are the long-term capital gains brackets. And basically, if you make less than $77,200, your capital gains bracket is actually zero, right? Now, this is really advantageous. As a financial advisor, many times, I look at somebody's portfolio, and if somebody needs money, you know, I try not to sell anything that's going to produce a long-term capital gain, especially a short-term capital gain, right? But under this new thing, because if I knew that my client, you know, maybe they're only taking Social Security, or they're not, you know, maybe they're getting, all they need is $50,000 or $60,000 a year. That gives me like space to go ahead and take profits on long-term capital gains, right? As opposed to maybe knowing you have to get out of something or you're not sure, but you know, because sometimes the only difference between staying in something and getting out of something is whether or not you have to pay the long-term capital gains. So these are the new brackets for the long-term capital gains, right? And so this is basically it, right here, all the way up to 70, something like that, right, is the zero, and then it goes to 15% and then 20%. But under the new structure, you never pay more than 20% on long-term capital gains or dividends. We're going to go into a little more, as we say, a little bit in the weeds here, but in terms of some of the things that have come up now. We're going to talk about deductions first. So, deductions basically an amount deducted from your taxable income, right? And what they just did was basically they upped the standard deduction. So for married people, it's $12,000 per person, or $24,000. So before you start to itemize, you need to make sure you have $24,000 worth of expenses. And they kind of shrunk some of the expenses. If you live in New York State, they did away, or at least reduce the amount that you, it used to be that all the taxes you paid to New York State and New York City was deductible, not anymore. Now there's a limit on that. There's a limit on how much interest you can deduct from your mortgages, right? Those kind of things. Only about 15% of the American public will now be doing itemizing. That's how big this $24,000 deduction is. And if you're more than 65 years of age, it actually goes up to $26,600. Each of you get $1,300 more in the deduction. So if you're over age 65 and you're married and you're filing joint, then basically the first $26,600, there's no taxes. Credits. You do get, you know, this is like the government's way of telling you that the cavalry is not coming. You know, so if you were thinking that, you know, I remember
when I first started in the business, I actually started in November of 1984. When I was talking to my clients in 1990, the prevailing mood back then was that Social Security would not be around for retirement. And I always felt that because of my background in politics, I knew that that was false, okay? Because you can mess around with anything in this country, but you can't mess around with Social Security. They're even messing around with Medicare, right? And they keep playing around with that. But anybody that's ever ran in terms of you know, doing away with Social Security, not doing away, but you know, phasing it out, whatever it may be, they just don't get reelected. It's called you might have heard it. It's called the third rail in politics. So what they do is the government has incentivized people, right? Gives you tax credits, which are immediate deductions from your income that you're going to declare, and they have such things as healthcare tax credits, earned income tax credit if you work part-time in your retirement, education credit, savers credit, child credit, okay? So those are just some of the things that, you know, we're not going to get too much into those details. If not, it would just be a very long night. This would be basically the deductions. Again, this right here, that's $26,600, right? And anything before that is zero. So, stop me if there's any questions or anything, okay? It's, you know, it's a small enough and intimate enough group that we can, you know, stop and take questions. Well, let's shift a little bit now and talk about the retirement mandatory distributions, or required mandatory distributions, right? most of you, if you're not aware of it, at age 70 and a half, you have to start taking the money out of your IRA. That's Uncle Sam's way, or the IRS saying, look, you know, we gave you a free ride. When you were 30 years old, you put some money away, and it grew, and now that you're taking it out, it's our turn, okay? So you gotta give us some of your money. And it's basically happens at 70 and a half. So if you're good enough to be born after July 1st of the year, so let's say you're born, in July 10th. So at age 70 and a half, you actually turn 70 and a half in January, which means now you can wait until the following December to actually take out the money. But if you were born like I was on May 31st, right, then I have to, then 70 and a half, I would have to take that out. I turned 70 and a half in, I turned 70 and a half in November, and I have to take my money out right away in that month. There's a one time that you can kind of delay it a little bit, but bottom line is at age 70 and a half, you have to start taking money out. And many times, financial advisors will tell you, you know, don't take that money out. Don't take it out until you're 70 and a half. Let it grow, right? And sometimes that's a good strategy, but not always. And we're going to look at that tonight. And it's really simple. How they figure out how much you have to take out is basically they look at the ending year balance of the previous year of your IRA. Let's say it's $500,000, and then they divide it by this little table, which basically says that age 70 it's 27.4. The denominator actually gets smaller as you get older, which means that even if you live to be 115 and you got $500,000, you still only have to take out less than half the money. So the system is set up so you leave something for your heirs automatically if you don't, you know, if you can't spend it all. But this is a thing, and many times you should rely on your financial advisor and his organization to figure this out for you. And if they're wrong, it's on them. Okay, we take a lot of pride in like you know, us doing it for our clients, and let us just say we check our math. Failure to do that is a 50% fine. The IRS is incredibly strict about this one. Okay, a little bit, did you get that? Good. Anybody want to take pictures of these slides and stuff like that? You're more than welcome to. Going to make a shift here and talk about another. We're setting this up for this for the case study actually. The sequence of returns. So, why it matters of the sequence of returns. What we're talking about is this, right? There's a phenomenon that when you're accumulating money, it really doesn't matter in a way. You know, if you know it's going to be 8% return, it's an 8% return, right? At the end of the day, you're going to reach the same place, whether at the beginning, you know, you start out with negative, and then, you know, the markets went in your favor, or you were in your favor, and then things didn't work out for you during your middle years, whatever it may be. So this is, I'm not sure how much you can see this, you know, in the back. So these are the factors affecting results before retirement. So right now, there's no annual. At the age of 41, right, we start with $100,000, 2 portfolios. And what portfolio is basically earned 8% of your money? In the good old days, it was pretty easy to get 8%. Okay, it is getting a little bit more and more tough to get an 8% in a portfolio, mostly because interest rates are so low, you know, on the fixed income on bond side. Okay, so such that regardless whether, you know, so what happens here, how they did this was in portfolio A, right, the first 3 years were like horrible years, right? This is like mid-1930s. The first year, it went down 12%, then 21%, then 14%, and then it turned around. It was a 22, 10, 4, 11, right? But at the end of the day, they ended up with an 8% return and $684,848. In portfolio B, right off the bat, you know, bam, right? It's like they put in the month, they started putting in the $100,000. It was up 29%, up 18, up 25, right? So in other words, what they did was, in this particular example, we took these numbers here and we flipped them around. So at the end, you got the 12 to 21 and the 14% negative returns. But either way, in both cases, you got $684,000. So far, so good? You guys follow that, right? Okay. If you don't, stop. You gotta stop me. However, when you go to take out money, it makes a real difference, right? It makes a real difference. In portfolio A, what happens is, right? You start taking the money out, same thing. The market's down 12, right? You're now taking out, doesn't say, you're taking out 5% of your annual income withdrawals of 5% from the portfolio, right? So that's what, in the example what you're doing, right? By the way, and this has been tested in so many ways, the sweet spot in taking money out, if you've got money and you don't want to touch your principal over a long period of time, it's 4.3%. You should be able to take out 4.3% of that money and never touch your principal. Some years you might touch your principal and then you're going to make it back on the good days of the markets. It's 4.3. In this case, it's 5%. Anyway, so in this case, right, first 3 years, man, it just, the person's getting clobbered and they're taking out the 5%. In this case, right, they're not. The market's is actually helping.
And what happens is, when you're taking the money out because of it, right, by the time that the person's 82 years of age, in portfolio A, they've run out of money. Whereas in portfolio B, the person's 90 years old, they have $2.6 million. So, why are we sharing this with you? Because it's very simple, okay? You have to have a knowledge of the markets in order to help you decide where you're going to get pulled money from, right? Look, the tendency of the stock market is that it always comes back. And it's true, it does. It always has new highs, dips, new highs, dips, right? The issue is that we don't know when it's going to dip, okay, despite everybody on CNBC telling you that they know, right? By the way, as an aside, if you keep telling people, like every 3 to 6 months of your life, that the market's going to go down, the market's going to go down, finally it does, that's the one they capture, right? That's the Polaroid, right? That they told you, and that's when it went down. They never told you that it took 2 years after that, right? That's one thing. The other thing is, the first person that called a crash in the market, and I've seen 6 of these, was a woman named Garzarelli back in the 1980s. I'm not sure, I think the first one was Diane Garzarelli. And she just became famous. I mean, like overnight, people, right, speaking engagements, etc. She called the crash in 1987, which, by the way, when that happened, I was happening to be with my friends in the Bahamas. Not a very good place, not a very good weekend either. So it started with a Black Friday, and then it proceeded with a Black Monday, and it was pretty bad. Anyway, so I tell you that because she never called another bear market again, and nobody's ever heard of her now for 15 years. And that's how it is. It's a show of personalities, right? And so you always have people that, and let me tell you, right now, right, and me and my partner, Amory, we look at this every single week, and there are certain signals that will tell you when the market is ready to go down, and those signals are not there. They weren't there in February when the market was down 6-7%. We told our clients, stay in there. Do we know when the market's going to go down? I don't know. You know what I mean? We hope that we see the signals and we can get our people out, but we won't get you out of the top, right? And when we get out, I tell my clients, we could be up for a year sitting in CDs, waiting for the signal to go back in. And when we go back in, we're not going to hit the bottom either. We're not going to buy the bottom, but you're going to get in and you're going to make our money. So, going back to this, so you can see how it's really important. So if we just had a 2008 and you happen to be in retirement, 2 problems, right? You start taking money out in 2008, 2009, 2010, your portfolio is going to have a really tough time to recover. The second thing is this: if you were going to retire in 2008, your financial advisor had better have put you in a very conservative portfolio. Because the idea to stay in a portfolio, right, as you would go into retirement, and you might still be in 70-80% in stocks, it's I'm not sure I can say it delicately, but it's malfeasance. You know what I mean? Like you just can't do that. I mean, a person, I can understand that the person says, no, I need a little bit more money. Yeah, but sometimes to try to get another 5 or 7% out of a portfolio, and now it's down 30 or 40%. You know, it's difficult, okay? There's a lot of, there's over 400,000 people giving financial advice these days, okay? It's like attorneys, there's good attorneys and there's, we'll just keep going. So that's why the importance, so you understand, there's the RMDs we have to look at, the required minimum distributions, there's, the timing of when we want to take the money out, right? And then this part here, the Social Security, okay? So, it was a hot day today. It was really a hot day. My wife bought me a Fitbit for my birthday back in May, and I looked at it today and go, holy cow, like, I'm almost at my goal. And it's only like, what, 7 o'clock. Anyway, she wants me to live a long time, so that was the hint. Social Security. So, Social Security in itself is not taxable. But it becomes taxable depending upon what kind and how much money you earn, right? It's called provisional income. So 50% of your Social Security benefit can be taxed based, right? If we start adding, ordinary income. Ordinary income can be if you're still working, right? Or you have a part-time job. Dividends and capital gains will add to that, as well as non-taxable, interest. So these are the thresholds for a single individual. It's $25,000. At $25,000, so in other words, you can make $25,000. Okay, beyond that, 50% of your Social Security becomes taxable. It's not your benefits are taxed 50%. 50% of your benefits become taxable, and then 34,000 become 85% of that becomes taxable. And then for a joint couple, it's 32 and 44%. These are really important because, we just talked about the mandatory distribution requirements. Then we talked about when to take the money out. And the third part is, right, nothing is more complicated than figuring out when to take out your Social Security. Right? It isn't. The first thing you have to deal with is, do you have longevity in your family? True story. I got a very good friend of mine and client, right? Nobody in his family has lived past age 65. He's 56 years old. So, I think he's going to make it. But with those kind of genes, seriously, you got to be responsible. Say, you know what? In your case, you may want to start taking the money out at 62, which is the first time you can take out. The only problem is that if you do take out at age 62, which is the first time you can take money out, and your full retirement age is, let's say, 67, right? That's when you're going to get your full. So those 5 years, basically, you're going to get 30% less money taking it at 62 than at 67. Okay? So, if you're wondering, because that was a surprise to somebody I just spoke to the other day, somewhere along the line, Congress decided that one of the ways to fix Social Security was you just don't give everybody the full benefits at age 65. We're going to wait. So for me, I was born in 1956. It's 60. I got to be 66 years old and 6 months. And I think if you're after 1958, it's 67 years of age where you get your full retirement. Now, if you don't take it at 67 and you wait till age 70 in those 3 years, then you get another 24%. So many times what people will say is, look, my grandmother, right? She lived to be 94. Her brother lived to be 101, right? Despite my eating habits, I got a pretty good shot at this, right? At living a long time. So I wouldn't take my benefits at 62. I would hopefully try to work, basically take them at age 70. But there's all sorts of strategies. There's all sorts of strategies that
one can use, with Social Security, right? There's things that used to be able where you could file and suspend, and now you can still do it. I'm telling you, only Congress could have made something as simple as that and turned it into just, a legal jungle. It is. So much so that we actually have software that will help you maximize the thing. The problem is that there's no software, and I'm telling you, there's no software out there that will combine the optimal time for you to take your Social Security benefits and look at your taxes at the same time. I've looked. I often tell my wife that I spend enough money, and I'm not kidding you, enough money on software every single year in terms of subscriptions to buy her a tennis bracelet. It just is, it's part of the business, you know? She's over there saying, I know. It really is, but it's an absolute necessary evil, because the rules really are so complicated. So, I'm going to, this will definitely you know, a speaker's fear is always that somebody falls asleep, right? And I've been leading different types of programs, whether finance or self-help, you know, for years and years, and it's always a fear. So I know that if I go through this, it will just be not good. So I will tell you this though, right? If you take me up on my complimentary review of your taxes and all that in my office, we will go through that step by step, right? And we'll talk about that much later. One of the things that they did do this year in the tax bracket, right, for taxes is Medicare, the premiums are now means tested. Meaning that if you make up to $170,000, you just pay for the PAN. You pay $1,608 Part B, right, and you know, nothing else. But as you go up in price, they give you this Part D premium excess, okay? And honestly, I think that the next step of Social Security is going to be means tested, where they're going with this. By the way, before you start, it's 1920. I don't think anybody in this room should worry about whether or not you're going to get your Social Security benefits. I'm serious. My daughter's 28 years old. I'm not willing to make that bad, okay? But you know, I'm seriously, I'm telling you that it's Social Security is actually in decent shape. Medicare, different story. Medicaid, we got a problem. Just to give you an idea, every day 10,000 people retire in this country. By retire, they turn 65. Nobody stops working in this country at 65. Some people do, right? Some people do. But for the most part, people, you know, they don't, you know, they keep working. However, for those people who are 65 and they stop working, the number runs between 55 and 70%, depending upon which study you look at, that they will run out of money by age 70. And this thing is called the white tsunami. And the tsunami in this case is the government having to take care of literally millions and millions of people, right, without having the facilities, the professionals, the resources to do that, right? And in Greece, back in the Greek days, they used to say that you always judge a society by how they treat their elderly. It's a really good way of judging it. And we're not doing a good job in this country. I mean, we're just, you know, it's just, the troubles are just, you know, they're just starting now. So, you know, and some of you may know people in that situation. It's really, it's really sad. This is another income tax, the net investment income tax, that they basically have added to people making higher income. That I think is basically was around, Emily, that was around last year, right? This is, yeah, this is one of the few parts that they didn't change. So, I like this distribution bucket, but I couldn't get a picture of a water going into a bucket. For all the thousands and thousands of pictures of buckets of water, I couldn't find one. So I got as close as possible to this, right? So there's two phases in money. The accumulation phase, which many of you are in, and then the distribution phase, i.e. retirement. And here's the thing, right? I'm going to tell one on my profession. On the accumulation phase, everybody wants to help you. Everybody wants to help you because that's where they make the money. That's where we make the money. That's where we sell you the mutual fund. That's where we sell you the portfolio management. But this is the real critical part of how to distribute the money, right? And many financial advisors, right, aren't really, you know, it's almost like they may not be telling you because it really is, there is an expertise to this. You have to be a specialist in terms of helping people figure out that distribution phase, right? So this is essentially, you know, if you're here tonight, it's because you're either in retirement or you're looking at retirement, and the further you are from retirement, the more planning that you can do, okay? So I want to tell you that that basically, you know, you've all been in the accumulation phase, and now you're all looking at the distribution phase. So here we talked about that. Again, the ordinary income tax map. These are the long-term gains. I'm giving you a little quick review because now everybody cross their fingers at this thing. We have Wi-Fi. You see it. They put it in the app. Okay. Come on. Here we go. Okay. So, I'm going to ask it because I do want you to follow this, and I hope that a dark room always leads to sleepy eyes. But would you hit that last light? Because I really want to have people, right? If I could do this. Don't you love that? Yeah. And what I'll do is I'll do it like this. The problem with these things that you can touch is like they're so sensitive. My God, it reminds me of my daughter growing up. So sensitive. I won't touch it. Suffice it to say that in this example, this is called tax clarity. This is the finest, like, for financial nerds like myself and Amory, this is like donuts to Homer in The Simpsons. Like, this is the best thing that ever, right? And this software is just incredible. So just as an example, what we're doing here, this is an example of a couple, okay? And they need $50,000 to live on. They don't have a lot of savings, but they do have a very good size IRA. They save money over the IRA, and they've been told that they should not take their
Social Security yet. They're 66 and 65. He's 66, she's 65 in this example, right? So they're saying that they should not take Social Security. They should wait until age 70 specifically because they don't have a lot of savings left. So here's the issue, right? So when they take this $50,000 out, you can't see it, but essentially what they're doing is they are paying an effective tax rate of 4.86%. So on that money, they're taking out $50,000, which is a pretty good chunk of it on an IRA, right? And they're paying a tax of $2,430. So one of the things that we talk about here, and what's happening, that we're starting to see it, is that people are not aware now that they have that. Remember, I told you about the deduction, right? Where you get the $2,660 if you're both over age 65, right? Which is outlined in this area right here. So what happens is, so one of the ways to look at this would be, right, in this case they're taking out $50,000. But what if we decided that in fact they would be able to take out their Social Security now? And this is kind of the thing that we play around with. Because as you know, this year this couple would be able to take out X. But next year they're going to be able to take out X plus a little bit more, because remember, the Social Security benefits still go up until you actually pull the money out. So if in fact here what we did was here we just put $30,000 here from their Social Security, let's say, and then the IRA distribution. So what happens is this, right? If we mix up the $50,000, this is scenario one, the $50,000. This, the little red dot, is now taking out $20,000 from the IRA instead of 50, and $30,000 from your Social Security. So all of a sudden now their tax rate is 0, right? Now look, this is just a very simple case of this, right? But there's a couple of things that we want to show you from this particular case. That if you don't take out all the money from your IRA, and you start taking out your Social Security, and then you take out less money from the IRA, right? All of a sudden, just say $2,430. There's a lot of ways to look at that. Okay, I'm going to show you both ways. One of them, $2,430 will buy you 2 nice balconies on a nice cruise, right? That's $2,430. Now, understand, if you start taking your Social Security out early, you aren't going to make as much money as though you waited. However, what it will let you do is this. Keep your eye on the red dot, which is the one right here. Okay? So if you do that, that's 21,000, 22,000, 23,000. Now you can take even up to $23,000 worth of your IRA, which is $3,000 more than this couple needs, and you're still not paying any taxes. So what this allows you to do is this. Remember that's why we talked about the required minimum distribution. You're going to have to take that money out eventually, right? So, but if you can have opportunities to take it out and you pay 0, you need to maximize those opportunities as often as you can. But you know, let's say for Ruben, we don't need those $3,000 to say, great. So what we do is we open up a Roth IRA, and you start putting that money away in the Roth IRA every time that you do something like this. Why? Well, because most people don't have money saved up for long-term care, assisted living facilities, and that. But if you start doing this at age 65, okay, and usually the oncoming of those things isn't into your 80s, you can take a lot of the money that you had in your IRA. Remember that I told you that you could be 150 years of age and you still have half your what's left over? Exactly. But if you could dip into that and take these buckets full of money out and put them into a Roth IRA where they grow, and when you take the money out, there's no taxes. Now you've cheated the IRS, and it doesn't like to cheat the IRS, right? Now you cheated the IRS out of their money, and now you've got some money left over for long-term care, which is the second.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So if you had a Roth prior, you would be probably better suited by having that Roth prior to having that money in a Roth as opposed to the traditional IRA.
It depends upon your income situation.
Okay.
Just the other day, I started a brand new couple. She's the child of a very good client of mine, and they're getting married, and I sat down with them, and she's 28, he's 30 years old. They go right into a Roth. There's no question. Number one, they're not making that much money. The reason people do traditional IRAs is because you can deduct extra deduction in your income tax, which still exists. However, over a long period of time, my daughter, she's in a Roth because she started when she was right out of college at 22. But so that money's just going to grow, and then as long as you've had it for 5 years, then you can take the money out without any taxes. So the question, you're right? And now you can do Roth 401ks and that kind of stuff. And then it isn't, what I mean? It's like what I said. It's like that picture. That's why that couple looks so confused. Because there's just so many.
Before, I guess, when people were not as familiar, probably a few years ago, if they had done a traditional IRA, to your point around the tax deduction, I guess that would make sense. But now with the Roth, you tax before, you tax after, right?
Yeah, in the Roth, exactly. You don't get the deduction now and pay taxes later, or you don't get the deduction but you don't pay taxes. Please, Carlos.
I just wanted to answer on this case study. You're saying that what they're taking from their IRA is tax-free. Is that because of the income that they have, which is lower? Because what I understood is you're supposed to pay taxes when you.
Correct. Exactly. And the beauty of the software is they'll tell you exactly how far you can go, right, without paying taxes. Now look, Amy and I, we've had this discussion many times, right? Why did people, does anybody remember why they told you you should put money away for an IRA? What was the reasoning behind putting money into an IRA?
Hey, you know,
And retirement.
For retirement, or what did you say? Yeah, the tax write-off is for retirement. Anybody remember the whole story that, your taxes will be lower in retirement than they would be now? Right, your tax bracket is going to be lower. Guess what? Up until this year, that wasn't the case. So now we've got the 7-year window. Okay, again, they may make it permanent, they may not, but we got a 7-year window with what happens if we just change this to I don't know, I just put in $50,000, right? So in this particular case, if we take out $50,000, you actually would pay about $5,000 in taxes. One of the things that Avery and I work out really well is we sit down with a client and we say, look, okay, I know you have to pay some taxes, but if you're paying an effective rate, the effective rate on this, I think, is a 6%. Yeah, 6.62. And in some cases, they're like 3-4%, right? That may not last forever. Someday, you're going to be taking money out, and because either we've got a budget deficit of $50 trillion or whatever it may be, right? We may want to take advantage of it. I know you're paying taxes, but if you could take huge chunks of your IRA and recharacterize them as Roth, maybe it's better to pay a 4% tax today or a 6% tax today than a real 10 or 20% in the future. If you remember, if you've ever taken money out of an IRA, the custodian, your Fidelity, I happen to work with TD, through TD Ameritrade, will say, do you want to withhold that? And what the automatic withholding, by the way, is 20%. You've got to take out a lot of money now to be in the 20% tax bracket. So, but that tells you that that's where interest rates were. We have an opportunity here, a 7-year window. We can just decimate this IRA bucket that's taxable, pay little or no taxes, recharacterize as a Roth, and now that money's going to grow. Because listen, you don't want to run out of money, that money's got to grow. That money's going to grow. I told you about the healthcare cost. This is the highest inflation we've had now in 10 years. The stuff that's happening in the economy is inflationary. At 3.9 in unemployment, at some point wages are going to have to start going up more than 2%, year over year. I hope you got the gist of this. Okay, please.
So that rollover can touch 5 years?
In a Roth, right. So I always tell my clients, let's hope we wind up not put in $50, $100. I just, because it doesn't matter how much as long as it's open, you got a couple of dollars in there. And so it just, and I don't know about you, but 5 years passed, they're flying. They're putting something in the water where the older you get, the quicker things are happening, But that was, remember when you were a little kid, like, God, you couldn't wait for summer to, like school year to be over. Anyway, so each one of you, let me do this. Lily, you want to pass these around. Okay, I didn't, I'm sorry, would you put a little bit of light on the subject here? Thank you. Let me ask you to turn it down a second. This is the report that you will get, and it will be specialized to you. And you bring in your information, basically, whatever you're going to get in Social Security, we can talk about it now. We can do something for the future, okay? This is part of what SOFA wants me to do. We promised you that there would be no product sold, okay? And you have that. You got that promise, okay? Here's the second promise. You can come to my office, we'll run this, and then we still won't talk about product. Okay? That's what I'm committed to, right? So you took an evening here to come tonight, right? You're going to get some good information, and then, and we're offering you like a part 2, which is basically to come, right? No obligations. Our offices are in Coral Gables. All you have to pay for is the parking. That infamous street parking in Coral Gables. Oh my God! Exactly. Okay, so let me see where we're at today.
these income tax brackets here on the example, are they for single person?
In this case, no, because the scenario here is for married. If you're single, we would do, yeah. This is a generic report, and it does. It makes a big difference. Unfortunately, with their just let me get to. So that one I like. Any questions? Because there's a couple more things I do want to talk to you about. But any questions so far? Good. So, your personal tax map varies greatly based on your personal circumstances. And it doesn't just vary upon your circumstances, it varies upon like all sorts of different strategies. So it's almost like, you know, if you remember your statistics, it's your permutations on this. Schedule, right? So, you know, I encourage you to schedule a no obligation appointment with my firm, right? Black Pearl Financial Services, for a free tax map report. At that appointment, we can provide you with information on how insurance or investments may help create a tax-efficient retirement income strategy, right? Again, we're not tax professionals. We encourage you to seek independent advice. So, probably the greatest name for a judge, named Learned Hand, said, anyone may so arrange his affairs that his taxes shall be as low as possible. He or she, these days, is not bound to choose that pattern which will best pay this treasury. There's not even a patriotic duty to increase one's taxes, right? So, and that comes probably from one of the greatest jurists in our country. So let's talk a little bit about our first meeting. So what's going to happen? I'm going to ask you 4 questions at that meeting, okay? What will I learn that's new? There's a whole bunch of things that we're going to talk about your particular situation. That's what's new. How long will it take? Maybe an hour. And what should I bring? You can bring nothing, you can bring anything that you want to bring. Okay? We can have this conversation without, without you bringing any statements or anything on that. Will you try to sell me anything? No, I won't. Okay? And you got my word on that. I didn't do it today, and I won't do it at this meeting. So how when I feel if it's over? I'm always looking for 2 reactions and 2 emotions, right? Relieved and happy and smart. Make it 3, right? Relieved, because here's the thing, right? You know, the reason I do this is, there is a moment in every single one of my relationships when I look at people going to retire, and I can look at them straight in the eye and say, guess what? You're not going to run out of money. Not only that, but when I do the financial plan for you, right? We're going to put $10,000 or $15,000 every year for travel because of how much you love to travel. I'm telling you, there's not a better feeling in that, because there's 2 things that we worry about: running out of money and what happens, in our last years. Those are the 2 things. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. So where will we do it? We can do it in my office. We can do it at your home. We can do it at Starbucks. It's indifferent. My office, I have all the gadgets and all the stuff, but we can look over my shoulder and, my giant, 9.5-pound laptop I have here. It's like, it's like an old Soviet style or something. I don't know, it just weighs like, it's a beast. That's why I've got a roller for this thing. Anyway, what would the next steps be? So there's 3 possible next steps. So we decided that we want to work together and begin to discuss specific ideas and strategies. You may be there, right? And I welcome you, to set up an appointment tonight. We decided that we like each other, but the timing may not be right. So we set a date to follow up in the future. Say, hey, look, school's starting, whatever it may be. Call me in the fall, whatever it is, we do that. Or we decide we don't like each other, we call each other names, and we run out screaming from the room. Okay? So it's one of those 3. There's not much other stuff in that. These are the 4 questions I'm going to ask you, okay? Ask my wife. I'm going to spoiler alert. I can't keep a secret. So, what specific plans have you made to triple your income during retirement? And you say triple, what are you talking about? It's very simple. If you are spending right now, I'm being conservative, $50,000 a year at age 65, right? And the government tells us that the inflation rate is 2%. But I don't know, I'm paying almost at BJ's $2.69 for tax, for gas, right? If you're renting, whatever it may be, that's going up. Healthcare's going up. So say it's 3%, right? So essentially, by the time that you're, in your late 70s, you're already, that 50,000 has to be 100. You live into your late 80s, it's going to be $150,000, $200,000. Okay? So in order to get $200,000 out of a portfolio at 4%, that's a pretty good chunk of money. It's a couple $1 million, right? So there's got to be some pretty good strategies of how we're going to make and triple your income during your retirement. What would happen to your financial situation if the stock market dropped 35% like it did in 2000 or 2008, right? And that was just, what would that do, right? You're ready to retire and boom, you don't have $500,000. You got 350 or you got 300 or less. If you died this year, how would your family's lifestyle have to change, after paying any taxes to the IRS? And the fourth question is this one, okay? And this is the one that it's not difficult for me. It's really more, for me, it's about making sure that I can keep my clients present in the conversation. What plans have you and your children made for dealing with rising healthcare costs and Alzheimer's? I don't know what the statistics is, 1 in 10, 1 in 6, whatever it is, of people that really like get dementia or Alzheimer's. I know one thing about all of us in this room, right? We don't want a loved one having to bathe us, or feed us, or clothe us. We want to have enough money to have somebody come in and take care of us. Be able to go to a facility that's private and not run by the state. And if you've ever had anybody in those kind of facilities, you know what I'm talking about, the difference that, that it makes. And so it's really important that we not only just have the money, but that you have the conversation necessary, that you have the papers. I'm not an estate attorney, but I push my clients, every single one of them, to get, a living will, HIPAA, a trust. It just, get it laid out for them. If you love your children, why would you put them in a situation like that, right? So, I work with a couple of attorneys, they do it dirt cheap. Just dirt cheap, right? So, as you can see by the way that I'm talking to the different fields, what we're doing at Black Pearl Financial, it's a holistic approach to it. And we deal with stuff where we're not gonna make any money, and that's okay. That's okay, because it's really about you. You guys need a place that you can come to, you can actually, and get all your questions answered and get all of this handled. So, you got something to look forward to. You get a chance to talk, finally, because I've been doing all the talking tonight, right? And, and I get to listen. You're gonna learn some new ideas. You're gonna get to see where we work, right? And there's not a lot of marble and brass. Just want to let you know, okay? Because if not, then, we wouldn't pay for it, you guys would. So, we are, we control our expenses in that way. You'll get to meet our team. In fact, so the woman back there, Lily, that I've been, pointing to and asking, Lily is my social media person. She's fantastic. She's also a very good videographer. And if you go on my website, which is blackpearlfs.com, it's all over that information I gave you. You'll see some of her work, and and so she's absolutely fantastic. And then of course, behind every successful man, there's even a more successful woman, and this is no different here. You're going to get something valuable. You will get that report. You're going to be real clear about your strategy of when to take out money. And here's the thing, right? One of the places that my industry really drops the ball, how many of you have ever done a financial plan? Like sat down with someone and gave you a financial plan. How many of you, look at it every single year and repeat it and add up to it? You don't. It isn't. It's great. I love when I meet clients, right, prospects, and they say, hey, have you ever done a financial plan? Yeah, and take it out. 2012. Have you seen this guy since? No, I haven't. Okay, so what I'm getting at is, we do the financial plan, we'll do this tax clarity, and we look at it every single year. Why? Because your situation may change. We might have had a great year in the IRA, and now we've got to take out more money this year. Or we didn't have a great year, we got to see. When I do a financial plan for my clients, at the end there's like a gas gauge. And that gas gauge will tell you the probability of not running out of money. Not running out of money. And what we want to get to is north of 75, 80%, right? But it will tell us. So if you come in like you would with a doctor and you get your baseline and you're at 82%, and then we meet again in the summer of 2019, and all of a sudden it's 75, I want to know what's going on, because we can do something about it. No? But if you go years and years and years, and all of a sudden you go, wow, we're at 32, now what? You follow me? It's like, it's preventive, financial, holistic healing. I don't know. We gotta work on that one. Anyway, you have a great experience. So, it's easy to set a meeting. Now, some of you may say I don't have my calendar. Listen, I literally, my next 3 weeks, during the week, during the day, even Saturday up to like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm willing to meet with you. So whatever works for you, Jody is back there, she'll set up a meeting for you. If you don't have your calendar, pick something you think will work. If you gotta change it, call us. We're incredibly flexible. I want to think about everything I heard tonight. You may be in one of those situations. I think you should. I think I gave you a lot of information, right? And, you do want to think about it. But here's the thing. When you wake up tomorrow morning, you're going to forget a lot of that stuff. I've been in those chairs. I have. So, what we tell you is very simple. Make the appointment. Come and see us. Okay? And then that way we're going to reinforce everything. And you will still be able to say, walk away. Right? I insist on never locking the doors when you come into my office. Okay, and this one here is I already have an advisor, and you should have an advisor. And I hope that you do have an advisor. And I'm sure that advisor is quite good. Quite good.
But I want to say something to you. If you have an advisor, there's still a reason you came here tonight. And that reason may be, it isn't that that's a bad person or they're not good for you or they're not answering the phones or none of that. It really comes down to the fact of whether or not, are they giving you this kind of information? Because for my 17 years at Merrill Lynch, I can promise you, our emphasis was not on this. Our emphasis was on that accumulation phase. That's what we did at Merrill Lynch, and we did it well, right? But I always wanted to get into the distribution side and become a real specialist in that. So, you may have an advisor, okay? Again, there's no obligation on your part. Come and see us, okay? We'll get you the information, and then you might just see that the experience with us is a little bit different, okay? You want to just consider that most financial advisors are general practitioners, right? 2 years ago, I got a hip replacement. I did not want Dr. Helfman, my general practitioner, to do my hip. You know what I mean? I went to a specialist. It's the same like if you want bypass, right? Nothing wrong with my internist. She's fantastic. But this stuff, there's a real creativity to it. So, as we come to an end tonight, a couple of things. Number one, seriously, thank you. Thanks for being here today. I hope you got some value out of it. I know some of you might have just come straight from work. It's a long day. Others didn't. They're retired but you were still inside probably with this hot weather. But I do want to thank you for being here. Without you, right, then, this is what keeps me like alive, doing these, educating people. I encourage you to get a cup of coffee, water, get some cookies. You got somebody at home, take some cookies with you. But before you go see Jody, okay? If you open up the black folder, there's open it up, there's an appointment card there. Seriously. All you gotta do is just check off some boxes and we'll give you a call tomorrow and set up the times that's gonna work for you. Okay? So, any questions? Jody will be available to actually do that. So,
Ruben, you mentioned this was fee-based. Your fees are based on portfolio? Is that that's how it's handled?
yeah, it's basically, God, I didn't even say anything about this. I'm a fiduciary, which means when I get audited by the state, I better be able to prove that everything I've done was for your benefit. Like, seriously. That's why we don't work on commissions. So I manage money and I charge a fee for it. It's a very reasonable fee.
What is the fee?
It depends on how much you go, but it's anywhere as little as 1/2 of 1% up to 2%. Honestly, this is the part that most of my clients pay 1%. It's 1%, and that includes the whole tax clarity, the financial plan, and the management, the portfolio management. Okay, so and it's based on how much money I'm managing for you. So if you got $200,000 and I do a great job, and next year it's at $230,000, then it's 1% of the $230,000. We are now on the same side of the table. Mm-hmm. It's no longer a case of here. Buy this mutual fund. Thank you for your commission, and good luck. Those days for me are over. Okay. But I welcome. I hope to see all of you at least for one more meeting. And I'll be here for as long as you have any questions or anything. Okay, so thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.